Hey, hello all. Good to be with us. Good to be with you today, I should say. And Josh, it's good to see you again. How are you doing?
Doing great, Owen. Glad to be back. I've been
Good.
on the show a little while, and I'm been missing it between the hooks.
Indeed, indeed. Everyone, meet Josh. He is our Chief Technology Officer at Spreetail and certainly one of the most knowledgeable folks in the e-com space in the US. I'm excited to have him with us today. Talk about some of the great programs and offerings and just the things that we're learning at Spreetail. We want to be transparent with you as we're all on this journey of how to optimize and win in e-commerce together. And that's the point of our show, is really to go through the key fundamentals of winning in e-commerce and winning in the marketplaces and how to accelerate your brand, both with your own efforts as well as with partners like Spreetail that can really help drive value. And so we want to talk today a bit about pricing and about how to make sure that your products are super momentous. And we want to talk about how, with that, we can focus on delivery speed. And so, delivery speed is a key fundamental of our business and how we drive share. So, overall, excited to dive into that with our speed and performance. So, um, Josh, maybe talk a little bit about the background it's retail around delivery and how we think about it and some of the pieces that you've been digesting with the team.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Spreetail's whole ethos and the reason for existing is competitive delivery speeds for big and bulky products, and we've extended from there. But speed and reliability has been a critical part of the DNA of Spreetail for a long time, and so this topic has been discussed frequently, even on the show before. But one of the things that we're continuing to see in the market, especially post pandemic, is that speed is and reliability as a combination of those two, and we'll talk about the differences and how they work together, are becoming even more critical year over year. And now it's becoming almost a baseline, foundational kind of necessity. And what we're seeing is the average expectation is not just going from 7 days to 3 days, but now it's like the baseline is 3 and 4 days,
Hmm.
and so we're having to increase the speed and across the market, as far as where we push the needle. And getting into same day is something that Spreetail has been pushing the needle on as well. And so across the board, that rising competition when it comes to speed requires that those faster promises are is just a key part of competing. And so we're talking about a capability that we've come out with called Promise Pro, and we'll get a little bit into that. But and the specifics is why that exists. But it's a super critical topic in the market.
Yeah, no, and encourage everyone. What we like to do in our sessions is to just have an open dialogue. And so if you have questions and comments you'd like to add, please put those in the chat here. And Josh and I will jump into those as they come up. Um, but one thing I'd like to hit before we jump into kind of the details is, if I have a brand that says, hey, I sell backyard furniture, and does that furniture really need to get to the customer in one day, versus 2 days versus 3 days? How would you answer that brand when they think about their, positioning their brand for success? How would you kind of talk to them about that?
Yeah, I would look at it in two lenses. One is definitely looking at what the competition is doing, right? If you're in a spot where your competitors are doing 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, right, or same day, then you're behind the curve. If you're kind of around the same spot, then what I can tell you is we have seen, even in the big and bulky arena, that, and I call it an arena because it's always about a ground, right? That the same day and next day delivery is still showing a good sizable uplift in conversion rate
Hmm.
across the funnel. Even as recently as last week, there was Amazon's had a big conference, right? And there's a lot of folks, and apparently one of the Amazon senior leaders noted that in public, that one of their what they're seeing is some of their same day delivery testing. They've
Hmm.
seen an uplift of 30% in conversion rates
Hmm.
from their typical like prime 2 day, 3 day, and so that was the first time that we've ever heard commentary around that from Amazon directly.
Hmm.
Obviously, we've run our own tests and we've seen some benefits by the faster and faster we get, but last week was a big comment because that we hadn't necessarily heard that before, and we're following up with them to understand what niches, but we still believe that we'll have that same impact from a big and bulky perspective, which is the majority of our catalog.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think one thing that I've also seen is that, many brands out there, legacy brands, have built their business in brick and mortar, right? Long before e-commerce existed. And what does brick and mortar give a customer? It gives them same day.
Uh-huh.
If a customer goes to Home Depot to buy a grill, they don't have to wait till tomorrow. They don't have to wait till the next day for the grill. They get it that day.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this immediate gratification of, hey, I went, I paid money, I have this grill, it's in my car, my truck, I'm going to take it home, put it together, and I'm going to cook, food on it tonight. And I think that people who remain skeptical around speed of shipping, what they don't
Uh-huh.
appreciate is that e-commerce is still the minority of sales in the US compared to brick and mortar. And brick and mortar is always same day. And
Yeah.
so until e-commerce gets to that point of same day, it's always at a disadvantage. And so those of us in e-commerce, we must ensure that we aggressively go after it to ensure that we're giving the customer that optimal experience. Because then it's not just, I think I like your point of like, hey, what's the competition doing? We always have to think about the brick and mortar competition.
Yeah.
And the brick and mortar competition is always same day. So it's another way to think about it that maybe is a little different than what some of us thought about from a shipping perspective. Is
Uh-huh.
like, I have to drive in my car, but I still get it right then.
Uh-huh. Well,
So
no, I love that analogy, because if you think about the shopper journey, which you mentioned in store comparatively to e-commerce, not only is it same day delivery, but like you said, that confirmation that of the purchase, right, happens in the checkout line, right?
yeah,
And the moment you get the receipt and that it's not, it's a high quality product because you could touch it and feel it.
right, right,
You have that gap in e-commerce in many places, and the faster that you can provide confirmation around, hey, what a great order it was, and the speed at which you're confirming that the order is being pick and packed, you're reducing kind of some of that concern. There's a lot to trying to compare it to the in purchase, and how do we
yeah,
continue to evolve that
yeah,
process when we can control that.
yeah. It impacts all aspects of the customer journey. Let's unpack that a little bit more. Let's talk about just reliability, the how speed and reliability impact and the customer, how it impacts the brand and sales. Love if you maybe pick apart some of those pieces that Spreetail
Yeah, we
sees.
we, we talked about that a little bit, but I want to get specific around maybe some numbers. I'm a numbers guy, and like to showcase some of the things that Google has shared, and it's unpublished, but it's public information. But this was a study that they ran across multiple channels where they had Google Shopping product ads kind of flowing through into the direct channel, where they were looking at badging and how you position on the product listing page certain information and what that meant to increase the engagement from shoppers. And what they found was really interesting was the combination of not just speed, but what we call reliability
Hmm.
has a pretty big uplift in engagement. And specifically, when you show the fast delivery, so as fast
Hmm.
as 2 days or sooner, you get at least a 7.5 to 8% increase in the number of shoppers that click on your listing page and stay there for a long period of time, considering the actual purchase, right? And then when you combine that with fast and free, it's not just fast, but it's also
Hmm.
free,
Hmm.
right? You get another boost as far as the amount of individuals that not just come to the page but stay on the page long enough to consider an add to cart, right? And then flipping over to the reliability aspect, thinking about, well, who am I buying from? That concept, like you just mentioned, of walking into the checkout. When you go into a store, right? That's it's Walmart or big box retailer, or there's a reason they exist. Like, it's hard to have that physical presence, right? It's expensive. Not as hard to do, online, right? You might have a number of sellers that squeeze through some of these marketplaces that maybe don't have the high quality. And so you need that confirmation as far as the quality of the product, the quality of the seller, and that relationship that seller has with the marketplace or with the consumer directly through D2C sites. And so you see an uplift there as well. So the combination of those things, especially in a tight window, becomes super critical. And this is a Walmart example, right? Where you can see all those things that Google mentions as far as having a big uplift in the shopper journey are all right next to each other. And I don't think that's by accident. I think these marketplaces know when you pull those things together, right? Because they've done their own testing, that it has a super important kind of uplift. And so it's interesting to see the merge of what Google, says versus what the marketplace are doing. And that kind of tells us that, those numbers are directionally accurate.
Hmm. That's fascinating. And
Yeah.
how does this actually fly into the funnel? I mean, how customers kind of move from looking, searching, understanding down to actually buying. Love if you'd speak to that.
Yeah, no, and if you think about the shopper journey, right? It goes from the consideration stage, or sorry, the searching stage, where they're looking for a certain set of products. They have an idea of what they're looking for, and then they look at the search results, and then they're identifying one in particular that they want to click or want to look at, and they click it, and then you get the detail page of the product, right? And then they add to cart and they buy. So across those stages, right? Delivery speed changes in importance depending on the type of product, right? This is a generalization based on our own expertise in Spreetail and kind of the numbers that we have. But as you look at the funnel here in the slide, what you see is it's increasingly important the deeper and deeper down that a shopper is in the consideration funnel, right? And so at the search stage, if you're just thinking about the search results page of like all the different 50 plus products after you type in a search, it influences the search result page, and especially comparatively to the other people at that keyword. But incrementally, it's 5% ish directionally, right? But then to get the click, right? So your positioning in the search result is around 5%, but to get the click, right, delivery speed against your competitors is around a 10% influence,
Hmm.
right? Of the total. Think about this as like 100% of the consideration. 10% comes from delivery speed comparatively against the other sellers, right, and the other products in that search result. And then when you get down to actually thinking about the shopper adding to cart, it increases to 20%. And then when you're comparing to other direct sellers on that same item, if you live in a reselling ecosystem, right, and you have multiple competitors on that product, then it becomes almost a third of your ability to win the buy box comes from your delivery speed. And so it's just an interesting thought process as you see this flip of from the top of the funnel all the way through, how it increases in importance, and that the delivery speed is always in comparison, right? It's not just for an item I'm 2 days and I'm okay across the board. It really matters who you're competing against, and that's what I mentioned earlier, as far as where you actually drive the clicks and conversions down to the detail page.
Hmm. One thing I think about when I look at this is that the buy box has the biggest factor of kind of impact by delivery speed. And of course, we know that the two biggest e-commerce, sites in the US in terms of traffic performance for general merchandise are Amazon and Walmart, and both have, deploy buy boxes, right? So
Mhm.
any brand that's going to play in those arenas has to ensure that delivery speed's top of mind, because it's buy box ties into control, and a lot of brands don't have complete control. Someone might go buy their product at a different brick and mortar and then sell it on a site or list it on a site outside of their control. So having really high performing and fast shipping speed is one way to ensure control, right,
Mhm.
of performance. So it's something I hadn't really thought about until you were walking through all those details. That's certainly really helpful. How do you, it's one thing to build out the network and have the ability to do that. It's another thing to actually showcase kind of all those promises to the customer, so that the
Mhm.
promises understand those and think about those. I'd love it if you maybe talk to some tactics or capabilities around how we think about just actually demonstrating, like actually communicating right around ship speed to the customer.
Yeah. Well, if you think about how challenging it is, especially at speed, to showcase, same day, next day, 2 day delivery, on a multi-channel lens, it requires a few things, and a couple things that every brand has to overcome. One is the fact that uh, it is almost impossible to do it if you don't have inventory positioned correctly. Every time that you extend the shipping time by a day, it becomes that much more difficult to get
Mm.
an accurate delivery promise because there's too much time between when the promise is made to when the product shows up to the door. There's too much variability when it comes to carrier performance, when it comes to the weather, when it comes to all these other factors that could disrupt the order. It just becomes that much more difficult. So the first thing in order to be really good about showing delivery promises is better inventory positioning across the network. So I'll set that as a baseline. You mentioned that earlier, like that is fundamental and something that we feel like at Spreetail we do really well. On top of that, though, it really comes down to overcoming some of the nuances of, do you want to, over bias towards an over promise and under deliver, or under deliver and over promise, right? The word promise is in there, right? In the delivery promise be for a reason. It's you're telling the customer, hey, this is exactly what you can expect. And then if you sell in the marketplaces, you're held to that standard, right? If you tell something that's too soon, and you miss the delivery, then you get dinged as a seller, right? If you're, if you're just being conservative as far as delivery speed, then in the competition realm in the arena, you might not necessarily be as fast as somebody else, right? And so that way, that chance to win the buy box, that chance to win the conversion, right? You're potentially losing out shoppers, and so that balance is really tough to do, and so you have to consistently be able to make those trade-offs between your own operations, the carrier performance, and the like, to determine where do you want to you an error if you have to error, right?
Mm.
But then when you get to, let's just say you've got that handled internally, like, hey, we know how we're going to do this, and we have all the infrastructure set up in place in order to make that happen and surface these fast delivery promises, right? When you get to the marketplaces, they don't necessarily make it easy, especially as you get to the faster delivery speeds, right? It's in the competitive market, we're always getting faster. It requires telling the marketplaces, for this one item, if the shopper's in this zip code, right, this is how much they can expect, that almost in near real time, right? And so the inventory syncing needed, just the number of shipping templates, if some of
Mm.
our viewers know what that is, which is basically for an item zip code combination, you have to tell the marketplace a unique delivery promise at a certain frequency, right? And so if you have a large number of items, that combination of every zip code for every item across your entire catalog, managing that at scale can become very, very difficult, especially if the marketplace doesn't have an API in the back end
Mm.
that manages at that level. It wasn't until very, very recently that Amazon actually lets you do that through an API. And we had to, at Spreetail, find different ways in order to surface those zip level
Mm.
promises at speed
Mm.
through different mechanisms versus a direct API. It
Mm.
took a lot of workarounds. But the same thing is true for like Walmart and some of the other marketplaces where they don't necessarily have that level of granularity. And even if they did, managing at that scale is tough unless you have a system that can manage that dynamically, understand carrier performance, understand weather, understand which products and which inventory, when to turn on and off a node, a fulfillment node. All those things happening in real time is not an easy solve
Yeah.
to make sure that you're getting that to the right promise to the shopper at any given point in time, right? And then the
Sounds
last thing, yeah, go
stressful.
ahead.
I'm just gonna say it. If I'm, if I'm a brand and I'm thinking of all the things I have to do to build my business and to scale, being able to manage all that at the same time, definitely understood why I think for most brands, just about all they can do to just make sure the product is there, right, and not always think about speed. But then you're losing, you know, probably half to a third of their sales, right, just from
Exactly. And
you're
that's
kind of.
why
It's almost
brands,
like in the football terminology. Apologies, um, and I probably shouldn't be a Nebraskan talking to a Texan in this environment about football analogies.
I
But it's
will hold that
almost
against
like
you.
it's almost like you get the ball all the way down to the 5 or 1 yard line, right, and then you just don't take it to the end zone, right? It's your red zone like work is just real weak in that regard.
Oh, it's exactly right, and I would almost say it's even further away from the goal line if you can, because many brands, they get into selling because they believe in their brand, like they
Mhm.
believe in their product, they believe in it. And what most find out is the operational side of it is hard. It takes up a lot
Mhm.
of time.
Yeah.
And when I talk to brands, often you feel this weight of having to feel like to think about the operational side of it. And then they don't get to do maybe some of the things that they got into the business of
Right.
doing to begin with because they're so focused on the operational side of it. And so
Right.
that's why so many default to, well, okay, maybe 5 days is good enough. And
Yeah.
if I deliver faster than that, right, then I'm not pinged on the marketplace, or I'm not pinged in the customer's eyes, right? And that's some of the challenges that brands face on the D2C side. Like a marketplace, you
Mm.
have to hit those delivery promises,
Right.
right? Because if you don't, right, you get dinged.
Right.
On the D2C side, what you're damaging is more of a direct relationship
Mhm.
with the shopper, right? That's your data, that's your
Mhm.
proprietary customer, right? And you spent a lot acquiring that customer. If you don't, if you don't have as fast of delivery speeds as you do on the marketplaces, right? They're just going to go to the marketplace to begin with.
Sure.
But if you can't deliver on that promise, then you're actually doing more damage to that customer relationship than if it was something that went wrong on the marketplace, right? Because you own that channel. And so that's some of the challenges with D2C brands, or brands that use D2C websites and surfacing those delivery promises there as well. Is you have to have that omni-channel synchronicity in some way, shape, or form to make sure that you're not disrupting your funnel in any one of those sales channels.
Yeah, it makes sense how D2C's already has a tough hill to climb versus, say, Amazon or Walmart or Target, because it doesn't have the customer trust that those big channels have built over decades and decades. And so the customer's already a little bit more on edge, right? Going to a
Mhm.
different site, a different site, a different site. And so if you don't make up for that with just great experience on the D2C, you're just losing more conversion, and you'll never see a conversion on the D2C that's even remotely close to what you would see on Walmart or Amazon. And shipping speed's a big part of that. So that makes a lot of sense. And how about but it sounds to me like on on the zip code side, maybe speak into that, because I think that there's a bit of stuff that Spreetail's done there, but also there's a lot of channels that aren't yet even capable of doing that as well. So it kind of depends on the channel, as well as depends on
Oh yeah.
what your software system can handle as well. Which Spreetail's done a lot of work there. So maybe talk to us about that, and introduce Promise Pro to us.
Yeah, that I'm thank you for the lead in on that. Yeah, we've developed a unique capability, right, that can handle that omni-channel promise, so that multi-channel promise. I wouldn't say omni-channel because it's not direct store, like you said. Direct
Mm,
store promise, it's same day regardless, right?
right.
But the multi-channel with marketplaces and D2C websites, what we found is because the marketplaces make it difficult, that zip SKU level combination requires a level of scale. The variations require scale.
Mm,
We developed a capability called Promise Pro, which we offer to our brands. Not a standalone like software, but it is embedded for our partners and everything that we do to make sure that we are offering the best experience and the best promise and the most reliability to our brands
mm,
and to their shoppers, regardless of where they shop. And so, what's really unique about what we call Promise Pro is that it's not only doing that for a single marketplace that makes it easy through API to do it. There are certain marketplaces, to your point, that don't make it easy because there's no direct backend API or anything like that. And so you have to find various methods, either through their front end interface with robotic capability, automation capabilities, or other means in order to dynamically update the seller portal in a way to surface those delivery promises at the zip code level, right? And so it's actually a harder problem to solve if there's not a direct backend API, because you're having to collect more data around that. You're having to turn on and off things independently, without necessarily the marketplace feeding that information for you, right? And so, for instance, Amazon just made a new capability recently, but like Target and Walmart, Home Depot, others don't necessarily make it easy to do that at the zip code level. But Promise Pro, through the various capabilities that we have through the front end seller portal interfaces and other things, is dynamically making those changes so we can then surface same day, next day, 2-day delivery promises as where we can. Same day still a little, we're still gapped there a little bit in some marketplaces, but most of them we can get to next day and at a zip code level, right? And the key other thing that is unique about Promise Pro is for the D2C websites, surfacing that information to your shopper in a at that level of granularity, so that way you're building that brand reputation and be able to surface that speed in a differentiated way. So, for instance, there's one brand that we've been working with that is actually changing their entire website around being able to surface this full funnel delivery speed and use that as an advantage. So that way, when folks are shopping for them, they can be targeting advertising at the individual level nationally, and we're dynamically showing through the website experience as well as in some of their upper funnel marketing what that delivery expectation can be. So that way, they're not advertising same day delivery and then they get all the way through checkout and realize that there's a difference of the delivery speed in the checkout. And so being able to align all that and dynamically surface that information on D2C websites it's a whole nother challenge. That's difficult as well. And so what's neat about Promise Pro and the capabilities that we can offer our brands is not just for the marketplace, but also for their D2C websites, and find ways to surface that delivery speed in a quick way. And then going back to our example earlier of when people are shopping in store, that confirmation is a huge part of the e-commerce journey, right? If you check out and you don't hear anything about what's happening on that order for hours, right? You're immediately questioning, especially on a D2C website. Is this a real site? Is this a real product? Or like, can I trust the sellers, right? And so being able to, at the time of the order, surface, hey, we've got your order, and then in some cases surfacing deeper level information while orders are being pick and packed, right? So there's not just the order confirmation, but there's the shopper can feel the experience that they're getting on the D2C website to hear what's happening to their order while it's being fulfilled in the warehouse before it even gets picked up by the carrier. That's a really unique experience that a lot of the marketplaces don't necessarily do. And so having that ability on a direct to D2C website to not just compete and have that same delivery promise, but actually have an edge on the post-purchase experience by having higher frequency touch points to build that engagement with the shoppers is really unique. And we've seen uplifts we've seen reductions in like the Wemo calls, or where's my order calls, that reduces strain on your customer experience teams. That a good percentage of those have to are just literally fill in the gap between the confirmation and when the shipment occurs, right? And so having that kind of tight frequency between there is super critical, and we've seen some really interesting findings now that we've been able to kind of close that gap as well.
Yeah, it's helpful. Hey, Josh, we've had a couple questions from Andrew Smith come in on the chat. I think I'd like to jump in and address those real quick, and then we'll kind of finish out. But Andrew asked some questions a little bit ago. I'll just summarize. How kind of we think about the dynamic promises of, hey, we gotta be dependent upon where the customer lives.
Yep.
Right. And what type of promise, so we have to know their zip code, etc. Maybe let's hit that one first.
Okay.
And I'll let you answer that one. You answered a little bit earlier, of course, on the dynamic zip code templating, but maybe we'll let you speak to that one first, and then we'll jump to some other comments here.
Okay. No, that sounds good. And if I hear you correctly, Owen, the question was about how we kind of define that over versus under promise concept.
Yeah. How do we present to the customer / think about the element that the delivery may be today, maybe tomorrow, be the next day, depending on where the customer lives and where the closest product to them is facilitated.
Yep. So there's a couple concepts there, right? One is the error. You can't be perfect always. And so when you err, do you want to err on the side of overpromise and underdeliver, or underpromise and overdeliver, right? For us, we want to be conservative, especially considering what the marketplaces consider your on-time delivery expectation to be. but our error rate is so small that we can be conservative and not sacrifice kind of what we believe our conversion rates are,
Hmm.
by biasing a little bit to protection, right? But you always have to think about what side you want to err on when it comes to your fulfillment capabilities, and can you actually meet those expectations? How do you manage that what do you have to consider in order to make those changes? It's basically a system that is aware of your throughput in the warehouses. How many people do you have staffed today? What is your total order volume across your network? What is your order volume expected to go to in that particular fulfillment node, right? And based off of what you're seeing of the actuals versus the forecast, and how many people you have and what their throughput is, because again, in fulfillment, you're not necessarily always working with full-time workers. Sometimes you've got staff augmentation and other people that are helping out based on the volumes, and so their performance might not be consistent either. So you have
Hmm.
to consider what's actually happening in the warehouse, and not only in the warehouse, but what might be happening across the route between the warehouse and the zip code, right? There could be weather impacts, weather delays. There could be carrier disruption, right? There might be a day where a particular carrier isn't actually operating on Sundays.
Hmm.
And so we have to like change carriers. So all those things have to be considered in real time, near real time, to be determining, hey, how much left can we actually fulfill of this item to that zip code, and then basically decrement that in a way to make sure that you can keep that shipping template on, and you don't have to change it to something else and extend the time period, or delist that item for that zip code, like remove the ability to deliver because you've run out too,
Sure.
right? So that's just as bad. That's actually much worse, is trying to drive traffic and convert someone that you don't actually have any product for. And so there's the micro and the macro they have to consider in combination.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, real quick, Andrew asked a couple of things around just checkout specific time. Like, hey, if the product has to be kind of coordinated with the customer on when it can be delivered.
Yep.
I'll actually jump in with a few thoughts on that one quickly, which is when we say big and bulky at Spreetail, we're meaning items that are non-conveyable. So typically over say 40, 50 pounds in size, and can't really be put in a conveyance, and typically you're have to go through some type of human touch, if you will, to get it. It can't be just automated in terms of facility conveyance. So it's a non-sortation type product. That's one element. Another element is actually pallet-based or LTL delivery, right? If you're having a hard-sided spa delivered to your house, it's going to be delivered. The third group, that last group, is what actually has to have an appointment. A carrier has to show up. You have to be home and sign for that. That middle group of non-conveyable, that's typically serviced without an appointment. So it will just be dropped off by your house by the various carrier that's chosen, whether that's FedEx or UPS or others. So we think about, big and bulky, especially on all those sides. But then there's also the items that are smaller, right, and much less than 50 pounds that also. And so for us, I think the communication mechanism and the speed of shipping matters for each of those buckets. And so all have to be very fast and very enabled, so that the customer can achieve a great product quickly. Similarly to if they just went down to the store, bought something and had it home that day. Any other, I guess, final points, Josh, you'd want to summarize with everything we talked about today? Any other questions that came in from Andrew or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, the key thing is thinking about the impact that speed has, not just against your competitors, but for your customer, depending on where they're
Mm-hmm.
shopping, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just some high level kind of impact numbers just to take away, right? There's, for every day that you can look at improving your delivery, what we've seen is, 12 and a half, anywhere from between 10 and 15% increase on your GMV lift every time that you improve a day of delivery, right? And so that could be huge, right? If you go to spreetail.com/smartshelf/promise pro, we actually have an online calculator widget that will showcase what is your potential uplift by increasing the speed of delivery, right? And you'll be able to see the potential impact based on your current GMV and what it could be based off your average delivery speeds today.
Mm-hmm.
And that will just showcase some of the things that we're just talking about today. right? That uplift potential, right? But then when you think about that post purchase touch point and the frequency at which you can communicate that delivery confirmation and what's happening on your order, right? That also can reduce the amount of where's my order calls. And so we've seen when you cover that gap between the moment that the order happens to the time that the carrier picks it up, you could see a 70% reduction in your where is my order calls, right? And then as you think about the amount of what we can actually solve for within Spreetail, but what it takes to compete at that scale, you need to get to something that's comparable in this nature, because that's where the market is, right? We're ahead of the market, but it's fast catching up to that, and that's why we're really pushing into same day and next day as well. But we can hit 80% of the US customers next day today, right? Spreetail. So as you're thinking about the speed and impact of delivery of what you can really drive for growth of your business, just think about the 12.5% average uplift on every day that you can get faster. And why not continue to try to push that to as fast as possible, so that way you can compete with the retail big box competitors.
For sure. That's super helpful and very compelling. I mean, those are huge numbers, right? Extrapolated over the course of multiple SKUs, multiple businesses and growth. And these are already things that you've already built the brand, you've already built the product, you've already built the inventory in place. This is just adding value, to use that analogy, in the red zone to get you into that touchdown area, right? And just going to enable you much more to be effective there. So it's worth huge amounts of investment to ensure that the effectiveness is super high. Well, Josh, this has been a great conversation today on ship speed and the importance of that. And I think it's a clear takeaway that if it's not a key fundamental part of our strategy to win as a brand and to accelerate growth, then this is something that's missing, and we've got to all get really good at this, and the bar keeps raising, right? So we've got to keep pushing overall. And yeah, thank you, Andrew, for your engagement and conversation as well. We look forward to talking to you more later. And with that, we'll see you next time, Josh.
You too. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Bye.
Bye.